We thought this was going to be Ted Lasso, but how could we be so far apart after actually watching it?
Which character caused bad reviews for this show with their eye-rolling lines?
Goes to show you, you can have all the talent in the world, but you still need a strong role model.
Will the role of Price Cahill allow Owen Wilson to break into more dramatic roles?
Hopefully more birdies than bogeys as Red and Red Real Reviews hits the links with Apple TV's Stick.
Ahoy, ladies! Didn't see you there. Would you guys like to set sail on this ocean of flavor?
Randall, look at eye contact. You're gonna be cool, right?
Oh, baby, I'm as cool as the other side of the pillow.
Staring at this board for days.
When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die.
Act. Bears eat beets. My brain is on fire. I'm dying.
I am the one who knocks.
Bears. Beets. Battlestar Galactica.
When they say 2% milk, I don't know what the other 98% is.
It's hard to believe we're even the same species.
You know nothing, Jon Snow.
Oh my god. The microchip has been compromised.
Dracarys.
Welcome to another episode of Red and Red Real Reviews. We are winding down season 2 of this podcast. And before we get into the comparisons of what this show has to one of our favorite streaming sitcoms of all time, we have to put Binge and Ginge out of her wheelhouse for a second and break down a sports show. Stick is about a past his prime pro golfer, I can speak, spiraling in his life, and he finds a young phenom to take him back to prominence. So the question of the hour, should you watch it?
Yes. And I feel like it's been a while since I really enjoyed something. I found something to be super easy to watch. It went by so fast for me. I watched 4 episodes in one go. When I started it, I just couldn't stop. I was like, this is great. I really liked it. So I would absolutely say watch.
It's crazy to me that since you said that, it's crazy to me because the first episode was 45 minutes, so it was a little longer than the rest of the series.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, like, oh my goodness, I thought this was a comedy going in. Why is it almost an hour? And it was just the pilot.
Yeah, they did the same treatment that they did with the studio. The first episode is 45 minutes, and then everyone after that is 30 minutes or less. So it was really easy. I kind of thought it was a 40-minute show all the way through. So when I got to the second one, I was like, man, I'm just banging them out. I watched 4 without really noticing.
I was a little surprised though, and it may have just been so limited I never caught one. Or it's just so ingrained in Owen Wilson's dialogue, it was just commonplace I wasn't noticing, but I didn't catch any wows.
I didn't either, but we were joking around about that, when we announced that we were covering this in the last episode. We were saying how Owen Wilson kind of plays himself and everything, but I actually really enjoyed him in this role. And I thought it had more substance than any past roles of his where he wasn't really playing himself.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't as much of a caricature.
Yeah, he wasn't as much of a caricature, and I really enjoyed it. Not that I ever could say I hated him in a movie, because he always plays a pretty harmless, likable character, but I did really enjoy his performance in this, and I thought he stretched himself a little bit.
Yeah, and I mean, I enjoyed it too. I played golf for a couple of years in high school, so it's something that's very kind of naturally entertaining to me. I know there was topics of how much golf was really present in it, which I didn't really think that it really got into the weeds, so to speak, until the end of the series. So it was still about sports, but it felt a little more distant from the actual sports topic.
Yeah, and that could be, to be truthful, why I really liked it. It kind of fell off in the middle there, and I know that there were some people in the reviews who were a little upset about that. They're like, this really strayed from golf, and I don't know if I liked that, but I actually did like that. And of course, I know like a hole in one. I know I've heard these phrases before, like birdie, bogey, eagle. Eagle. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've heard these phrases, but like I don't necessarily know what they mean. So I was Googling a couple things. I was kind of like working out the logic in my
Okay.
mind.
All right.
And it made me learn a little bit more because in high school, I did not play on a golf team, but they used to make us play golf in gym class. Like they used to just make us learn to hit. And we had a gym teacher who would call out all the time. Like there was this rumor that he was hungover all the time and he would call out. And so I remember one time we were out in the field hitting golf balls. And they were showing us how to swing and all of that. And I was hitting some grass and my gym teacher came along and was like, hit like a woman, Allison. And I think he meant like, just
Swinging like a
kind
dude.
of, yeah, stop getting all this grass. Like, what are you doing? Like kind of tighten it up a little bit, So I thought that was funny. That's my experience with golf. And then of course, miniature golf with my nephews, which I'm not great at either.
Well, miniature, it's funny how miniature golf is a little bit of a more intricate animal than actually hitting front nine, back nine.
Yeah, I think there's an art to it. There's a science to it, right?
Yeah. The other thing I noticed right off the top is the cast I felt was a little fairly unknown past Owen Wilson. Like Judy Gear's in it, but she's kind of like in the beginning and a little bit in the middle, and then she's not there. And Timothy Oliphant, which I didn't even realize till after the fact. I never recognized him unless he's bald, which he wasn't in this, because the first thing I always think of is Hitman. But he was kind of like in and out, very minimal exposure there. So the only like real known face outside Owen Wilson was Mark Maron. And I kind of recognized his name. I knew his face. I couldn't place it. I'm scrolling through his filmography. Didn't see a whole lot. So it was kind of nice that the cast was very fresh faced in this.
Yeah, I did feel like Elena looked familiar, but I looked at her filmography, nothing stood out. I thought it was Mark Maron. That's how I thought you pronounce it. But the only show I know him from is Glow, which was the show about the female wrestlers on Netflix. And that was on for, I think, 2 or 3 seasons. And then they renewed it, but then they later walked it back and canceled it. So people are always kind of upset about that. But I mean, that show was getting a little bit like, it was in the 3rd season or so. Yeah, it was kind of getting not good. And but he was good in that. But he played a little more of a wholesome character in this. Like in his character in Glow kind of was similar to like the character of Price. Like he's like a drinker and he's bad with women and he's kind of like a sarcastic a-hole,
Yeah. Mitz he did kind of remind me of Glow, and I'm glad you brought up Glow because I did watch Glow, but that was like so far down. Like I was scrolling, I still couldn't find it. So, but I do remember him from Glow. I just could not find it in his filmography.
Yeah, he has a pretty vast filmography, but also I think what he's known for these days is he has some sort of podcast that I think he has a good viewership for. That's a pretty popular podcast. So I think that's kind of what people probably know him from most.
Yeah, he's kind of got this energy of like, he's got this soft interior, but he's kind of rough around the edges. And he kind of looks like your typical indie filmmaker. So knowing he's a podcaster in IRL, it kind of makes sense to me. It seems to fit. It tracks, as the kids say.
Yeah, and I mean, other than that, the actor who played Santi, actually, this is a fun fact. You might remember this. The girl who played Zero, we've seen her in something before. She's from Yellowstone. She was John Dutton's aide.
Oh, Claire.
Yes.
Yeah, is a chief of staff or whatever she was.
Clara, I think is her name.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was crazy. I was like, what do I know this girl from? And I looked her up and I was surprised to see that she was Clara, because this is such a different role where she was so mature and so great in that. And actually, it's funny because before we started covering this show, I looked at IMDb and I always look at that that typical score. It's like a number 1 through 10, you know, that they it's right next to like the star rating. And I think it was pretty low. And it was lower than I would have thought. I think it was in the 6s or something. So I was
For the
like,
show?
I was like, yeah. I was like, is this show like not very good? And if you look at the negative reviews, like if you look at all the episodes, episode 4 is rated so low. It has like a 4 or 5. And that's because that was the episode in which Zero is introduced. And a lot of the reviews, like the negative reviews, are mostly about Zero. Like people hated that character. And I definitely could see why. And she gives a lot of eye rolling lines, and you're just like, this is ridiculous. But for me, it didn't put a damper on the show. So that's why I was like, oh, this sucks that, you know, people are taking her character to heart and are rating the show lower because of that. I didn't like that.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like that effect of whatever it was, episode 3 or 4 of Last of Us 2, where you see like the episodes with higher rankings, and that one episode that just sticks out like a sore thumb because it's like 4 out of 10 or something.
Yeah,
Like,
it brings the average down for sure.
Yeah, that background woke rejection or whatever it is. She's just where Zero just comes off as this typical like, you know, spoiled Gen Z throwing off whatever opinions she wants. And it's like, what?
Yeah, this she/they where you're just like, come on here.
I mean, I don't mind when I kind of understand like getting frustrated when Hollywood does that stuff, but I also kind of like when Hollywood does it and makes a caricature of it. So it's like kind of like they're making fun of themselves. Like they know people don't like that stuff, but they still have to like play that representation. But at least they can kind of prove that they can have some fun with it.
And also the fact that they can see when audiences are not receptive to it, like the fact that episode got rated so much lower, and coincidence, it's the one that she's introduced in, and she's spewing all her bullshit in that episode.
Yeah, shocker.
Yeah.
It's often hard to review a comedy, especially one like this, where at times I wasn't even sure where I could really throw it in the comedy bucket. There were some cheeky moments, but I didn't really find myself laughing out loud too often. You know, there was that quest into that cavern retreat where Price is trying to find Santi after he runs off with Zero. There were some funny moments in that, jumping off the cliff and that sort of thing. There was Mitzi's little anti-Gen X rant to Zero that kind of like, you know, pushes her back off her pedestal. But past stuff like that, this felt more drama. There felt like there was more active storylines. So I thought that this series had more of an emphasis on relationship development and things of that. So let's go over some of our favorite relationships in it.
I had a few favorite relationships. I did really like Mitz and Elena's friendship that kind of turned into something a little bit more, which was a little bit surprising, but in the same regard, it wasn't really. It kind of made sense, strangely. So,
I found that to be so obvious that was going to happen. So you would think when something is so obvious on screen, you kind of fall back from it because it's like, oh, well, I knew that was going to happen. But it still felt endearing throughout watching it unfold.
Yeah. Oh, I would absolutely agree that that moment where she's telling him that he doesn't take enough risks, and then he just kisses her and she's just like stupefied and that whole moment was great. Yeah, yeah.
And walks off from her.
And then they don't really talk about it right away. So it was this hush thing that was it was sort of predictable, but in the same regard, you're kind of sensing that they have chemistry, but you're like, oh, that's too easy of a beat to take. Like they're not going to do that, but they did, and I really, really enjoyed it.
And it kind of makes sense that like they didn't really address it too often because you think older generations, they're not as prone to discussing emotions like that. So it kind of made sense that it was more of an action, not spoken type of chemistry.
Yeah, I really love that. I'm anxious to see where that goes.
Yeah, because we got another one coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that one too, and that particular scene was my favorite in their kind of chemistry, just because of that whole like, oh, okay, yeah, lays in, smooches her, walks off. She's
Mm.
like, ah,
Yeah.
yeah. Another one. I mean, Price as the main character, obviously, is
Mm.
going to have a relationship with everybody.
Right.
Santi's the big one, and there's this constant energy between them where Santi, with all his natural abilities and physical athletic talent, he always has this edge to Price where he quote unquote doesn't need him.
Hmm.
And I thought that they constantly go back and forth with that. Of course, there's a time where Zero's tie to their group winds up being a little manufactured, and Santi takes offense to that, so he pushes Price
Mm.
away. And then, of course, at the end, when his father comes back into the mix and he pushes Price away, just not necessarily with the hostility. So watching like Price and Santi's kind of growing trust of each other was something consistent throughout the series as well.
Yeah, and I liked how their relationship started with this kid just saying, "Oh, this old man is being ridiculous.
Yeah,
Like, leave
Creeper.
me alone." Yeah. And all the jokes about like, being a pedophile or whatever, like, why are you talking to me? And
Yeah.
that was funny, but I their friendship kind of had an arc where Price is just looking out for Santi, and Santi kind of ends up being the son that Price never had. And Mitz kind of sees that and calls him out on it, saying,
Mhm.
it's doing this is not gonna bring your son back. And I just I really liked how Price was able to see his dream realized, the fact that he never got to see his son through, all these important events in his life. And there was an episode about that where he's sort of daydreaming about what it would have been like to raise his son. But now he kind of gets a second chance. And I liked that aspect of their friendship where they start to trust each other.
And I thought that was a bit of a two-way street as well because Santi's missed having a father figure male role model in his life
Mm.
for so long that Price is also kind of the father that Santi lost, so to speak. So it's a little bit going in both directions where Santi is something that Price never had, and Price is something that Santi, uh, for all intents and purposes, lost.
Right. Yeah, they're
Uh,
filling that need in each other's lives.
yeah, the voids, gaps, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
The other things that Price, the relationships that I found appealing to Price were that he's got a lot of interpersonal relationships from prior to this whole Santi thing unfolding. I mean,
Mm.
you see a very strained relationship with his wife, Amber Lynn, where she still kind of has feelings for him, but she knows that he's been such a train wreck, she can't be with him anymore. And eventually gets back to the point where, like, she sees him starting to regain what made him stick. And and that kind of becomes more endearing to her. She tries to get back, and he has this like super level of maturity where he almost pushes her away because it's like we know this doesn't work.
Mm.
Uh, and then of course he has this relationship with his rival Clark Ross, who they became agitated because Clark said something pretty insensitive about Price's son.
Mm.
And so they always have this back and forth, and he won't accept that Price is a better golfer than him because he's got the acclaim, he's got the money, but Price has all the natural ability. So there almost winds up being this rival to reconciliation phase between the two of them.
Yeah, that was I did actually the last couple episodes that kind of focused on the rivalry with Clark and in trying to get the sponsorship for Santi. I really liked that, like especially the second to last episode I really liked, and seeing that and how it wasn't really the animosity that Price thought it was. The whole season we see little clips of Clark, shilling for his insurance company or whatever on TV, and you get the sense that this is Price's nemesis. You know what I mean? But how it ends up is that they're really like, it's not really as much of a competition as Price made it out to be, or as he thought it was. Clark is kind of mostly cool with him and appreciative of, I mean, not like Price handed fame to Clark, but he's more appreciative of what he has is because of what happened in that tournament or whatever. And I did like the whole rivalry with Clark. I would have liked to see a little bit more of that. But I also did enjoy the sort of a atypical support that Amber Lynn and Price have. She's his ex-wife. I mean, the fact that they have this care and love, and she wants to see him do well. She's rooting for him. And I think a lot of that is because they bond over the fact that they both dealt with the loss of their son, which was like a unique loss that bounded them together, and no one really knows their pain except each other. So that's still what they have in common despite being divorced. And I think that was mature of him to be in a good spot and to say, like, listen, like, maybe we're just trying to get back with each other because it's comfortable, but like, I'm good now. And I think he sort of realized that the death of their son is what binds them together. But that's also what sort of troubled their marriage or made it fail.
Yeah, and that one was kind of hard for me to get connection to, just because it was so minimal in the storyline. But I think it was still important to see him kind of not be so primal about their chemistry and realize that it didn't work anymore. That, like you said, the only connection they had was this shared trauma.
Yeah. And like, that's not healthy. And I think he realized that wasn't healthy. So he was like, I'm not gonna give that up, that this, support, and she wants me to do well. And, he didn't want to give that up for like a night of passion. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And then with Clark, like I really enjoyed the whole hustle scene in the bar.
Yes.
Especially because I kept like waiting, it's like, okay, when is Price gonna really hustle him? Like, you thought like, oh, he's just playing cat and mouse with the putter and the cup thing, but like, it's I keep missing it. Oh, I keep missing it. And so I kept waiting for the payoff there. And then, of course, in typical Price fashion, he skims the golf ball across the puddles with a less than optimal club.
Yeah, that whole hustle scene was great. Although the more I was thinking about it, I was like, okay, Santi is 17. Like, how old is Zero supposed to be? Is she supposed to be like out of high school? Is she supposed to be like 19 or 20? Like, she was working as a bartender. So, I mean,
Caddy.
can you pour? Well, no, but before that, she was working at the golf club.
Yeah, I think as a caddy. I think she was a caddy.
But she was pouring drinks at the bar.
Oh, she could have been doing both.
I mean, I don't know. You might be able to actually pour drinks when you're under 21. That might be a thing. That is kind of weird, but and then just the way that she was supposed to be like a journalist or something. I'm like, man, are we like really getting? Are they really trying to get Clark Ross in trouble, like with this like underage girl, or is she like a little bit older than Santi? Like, I kind of thought she might be a little bit older than Santi, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I could see her being like 2021.
Yeah.
Which is funny because then it's like, okay, well then Santi's the underage one, and you could get some statutory nonsense going on here.
I know. And speaking of Zero and Santi, I did actually, of course, Zero is annoying sometimes, but I don't know, I still did find myself rooting for her and Santi. I don't know, I just thought it made sense. Like at first when she was introduced, I thought it was going to be just a friendship because that's kind of how they acted, was just like she had a good influence on him. And that's why Price was like, oh, well, he listens to you. So, you know, I thought that was more of a friendship. But then when it turned romantic, I was kind of like, you know what? I'm kind of into this. I don't know, call me mushy, but I'm kind of into this.
Well, it's almost like a redemption arc too, because our first, like we talked about before, our first um ingest of Zero was like eye roll, Gen Z, woke nonsense, that sort of thing. But then to see her like she has to, she winds up falling into this supportive role to Santi's fame, and Mitz kind of and her having the back and forth with Mitz, and having to have this bargaining relationship with Price as far as like, I need you to kind of get in Santi's head to convince him that I could be of help to him. It kind of like helped Zero to kind of dial back who she was and mature a little bit and realize like it's not all about me and what I think of the world. I need to interact with other people too.
Right. And also, too, I think you have this. Well, I had this impression that because she's this, oh, I'm a she slash they, like
Mhm.
I thought that meant that that's why I saw it as being a friendship only because I was like, oh, well, she's not going to go for the normal standards of like, I'm going to date a man. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
so I was kind of surprised when it turned romantic, but pleasantly surprised. And of course, it was a little toxic the way that they were trying to pull off this hustle. And Santi's like, you're enjoying this too much. And, like that was a little bit toxic, that whole thing. But I mean, ultimately, I do think the way that she was supporting him as a caddy, like being sort of a submissive role when she's into all this like feminist bullshit, and woke politics. Like I did like the fact that she was willing to be in like a normal relationship.
I almost wondered if they were playing up their past tensions when they were hustling Clark. Because at that point she was kind of back in with the group a little bit. So I was kind of wondering if Santi was kind of like playing that up a little bit still to kind of, take advantage of getting Clark all riled up and going along with Price's challenge.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought that it was just that Zero was like, this isn't right. I think like what she said was how she felt. I mean, I could be wrong. Like, I think she was being genuine in that. I don't know that that was played up at all. After they had like slept together, I think that Santi was genuinely like attached to her. And that's how
Yeah.
they realized it. And then doesn't she say, when he's like yelling at her, like, oh, well, you're enjoying this too much. Doesn't she say, like, I loved you, like, why are you acting like this?
Yeah.
Or she said something like that in the moment. So I think that was kind of unfortunately the moment where they realized that this was like a really serious thing between them.
Yeah, I feel like she said that a couple times and it didn't really like click in with Santi because he was angry.
Right.
But I feel like she also said it as almost a moment of surprise to herself. Like I don't think she
Yeah.
was expecting to be there.
No, it did. It came out of her mouth, and she wasn't expecting it. And then when they reconcile later, he says, "Oh, well, you said that you loved me." Like,
Yeah.
he kind of brings it up again because it was said in the heat of the moment, but they realized that there really was some weight to it.
Yeah. All right, we differ on this, but that's what makes podcasts fun. We have to compare this to Old Teddy Boy because I found the similarities here to not be very comparable until the end. And I have a very specific reason why that. But so I will, for this topic, you get the floor. Sell me on why this was more comparable to Ted Lasso because I did
Oh,
not
okay.
see this until the finale.
Oh, I saw it in the first episode. So the way I saw it, Price and Ted Lasso are very similar characters. Just the fact that they're both like positive, friendly guys who are kind of like in a bad situation. They're down on their luck, right? So in the first episode, which you pointed out was a little bit depressing, we had Price, living in his ex-wife's house. She wants to sell it. He's like wasting away. He's getting drunk out by the pool. He's like smoking doobs, like kind of a loser. Like he's this has been, he used to be a golf star. Now he's just, again, living in the house of his ex-wife. And then in Ted Lasso, of course, he's obviously a more positive, friendly guy, but he was dealing with like a low-key drinking problem. He had terrible anxiety, loneliness. He was dealing with a failing marriage. Like his wife just devastated him by leaving him. And so I kind of felt the parallels in that first episode just in the main characters. And then some of the things that Price said, or that Owen Wilson said as Price, I could literally picture Ted Lasso saying, just like with a drawl, his like Missouri drawl that he has. So I saw the parallel with the characters. And then to me, I think that both shows kind of had a similar ratio of like feel good moments, like comedy, and then heart. Like there were a couple moments where like I was almost tearing up. I mean, going through the stuff with Jet, who is Price's son, that kind of got me in the feels. And then even that like moment with Mitt and Zero where she like hugs him, and he's kind of surprised by it. Like I loved the relationship, kind of like a father-daughter relationship between Mitts and Zero too. Like there were some things that really tugged on your heartstrings. And yeah, I don't know. It kind of reminded me of how, I mean, I probably cried more when I watched Ted Lasso than I did when watching like This Is Us. Like I probably did. Like I would ugly cry with Ted Lasso, like just the things that happen like were so touching, and then like the next moment you're like kind of laughing or smiling. Like and I just remember, that's what I remember most from watching Ted Lasso, is just being like a roller coaster of emotions. You'd be like grinning and then you're ugly crying 5 minutes later, and I kind of got a little bit of that to a lesser degree for this show, but it had the same balance of heart and fun to me. And yeah, that's kind of what I saw. As far as, to your point offline, I do think Ted Lasso stuck more to the sport of soccer than try to saying that 10 times fast. That stuck to golf. It was a little bit in the middle, like the first few episodes, it was pretty focused on golf. In the middle there, it kind of fell off a little bit, but yeah, I mean, generally the fact that they're sports shows, you could say that they're similarly anchored around sports. So yeah, those were the few similarities I saw. And I think that the same way that Jason Sudeikis has won awards and been nominated for things as Ted Lasso, I thought that maybe Owen Wilson has a chance in getting nominations and awards in the future for this role, just in the fact that he finally has a character that has more depth. And I thought Owen Wilson did a great job with those serious moments, like with his son and reflecting on all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe to that point, maybe this is by design, but like I didn't find the ratio of heart to comedy to be as close as it was in Ted Lasso, because I found Ted Lasso, the comedy in that, to be a little bit more silly and slapstick at times.
Yeah.
A lot, and of course there was a lot of poking jabs at Ted because he's a fish out of water. So the humor seemed to be a lot more present in that than there was in this. The humor in Stick seemed to be more environmental based, and it was kind of like the humor of the moment versus the humor of the dialogue. So with Stick, I kind of got a lot more of the emotional, heartfelt kind of side of this than I did with Ted Lasso. Ted Lasso felt like it was more closer to a 50-50 split most of the time. And to your point about the acclaim and that sort of thing, maybe that's by design because Owen Wilson's got a typecast reputation where he's always the silly guy. He's always the I don't want to say down on his luck, but he's always kind of like the black sheep of the cast as far as how his character is portrayed on screen. So maybe to this point, this is a little bit by design to kind of break the mold of like Bradley Cooper had to do from Wedding Crashers and The Hangover.
Yeah.
Maybe this is obviously coming much later in Owen Wilson's career than it did for Bradley Cooper, but Owen Wilson is trying to like break out of that kind of lovable loser role and have more serious things.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of Adam Sandler. We always thought of him in The Water Boy and Happy Gilmore and all those comedies, but then he made that very serious switch to like Punch Drunk Love was the first movie I remember that he was serious in. And so everyone was like, wow, this is crazy. You have a super comedic actor. And like now that's more common is you have comedic actors switching to drama and they always do so well at it. You have like Bill Hader, like Kristen Wiig, a bunch of people have done it and are great at it. So that's what I kind of hope for Owen Wilson. Like I hope he kind of harnesses his craft and he kind of gets in there and really gives more depth to this role. And now that he has the chance to, for a role like this.
Yeah. And as far as how the show started off, this one I definitely have to disagree with a little bit because Ted Lasso was coming off of a championship coaching American football. So Rebecca put him as a fish out of water to coach the soccer club football, not soccer. Yeah. She kind of did that to him as a jab to her ex-husband, but like he was coming in there with confidence. And like, he was dealing with his personal stuff on the side, but that was away from how his role carried out in charge of the football club. So that was like, they weren't necessarily like for him, they were interlaced, but as far as what the club saw, what the audience sees, they were kind of like two ships flying in the night. Like they didn't really cross too much. Whereas with Stick, Price his personal struggles are ingrained in the development of his character. Like building up this guy that had all the talent in the world, had one terrible moment, crashed to the earth in flames, and now has to build himself back up. Like that is his character. Like everyone knows he was a train wreck. So people don't know that Ted Lasso was a train wreck because it's everything with his divorce and trying to be close to his son is kept in the shadows.
Right. Yeah. And to your point, Ted Lasso wasn't really a has-been by any means. Like he was still kind of off the coattails of his decent career as a coach. But yeah, so he didn't have the I think hadn't it been, I mean, Santi was like the same age as Jet, Price's son. So hadn't it kind of been like well over a decade? Like if you do the math, I think wasn't their son 4 or something when he died? So
I think they said he was 4, yeah.
Right. So you could say it's been literally 13 years that he hasn't been playing golf. So yeah, there's definitely more of a has-been aspect with Price because he hasn't done this sport in so long and he's been out of it for so long. So, Ted Lasso is always kind of in it. So I guess there's that difference. But and to your point, Ted Lasso kind of dealt with these problems like later on. Like it wasn't like that initially. But yeah, I just generally felt the same vibe with them. And especially with the last episode, I'll give that to you. That very much had a feel good, like Ted Lasso, like hip hip hooray vibe to it, that just makes you smile.
Yeah. And to that point, it did have the feel good moment at the very end, but the bottom line of the finale of the tournament is Santi didn't win because he had that implosion on 16, I think, 16th hole, I believe. So there was also, and I kind of like when shows have a darker, so to speak, undertone. Like I should say, sports shows have a darker undertone where you don't always win. And I felt like that was also tied to Ted Lasso because they didn't win Premier League at the end. They came very close, and then Ted left. So there was a little bit of a darker undertone to that as well. There was an emotional feel good about the finale, but there was no tangible success about how it ended. So I like when cinema does that because you had Billy Bob Thornton's Friday Night Lights where they lost the championship game. You had Rogue One out of the Star Wars series where everyone dies because that's the way the Star Wars story went. So I kind of like when a show has the ending where even if there's an emotional feel good, there's no tangible success to it.
That's true. Yeah, it was sort of a truly happy ending.
Yeah. Well, I guess it depends on your definition of happy. Because the euphoria of sports is winning a title, and if you're not winning a title, then it can really be a happy ending.
Yeah, I guess.
But I mean, there's more to unbox with the finale, of course, because it starts off. It looks like they've got all this momentum behind them. They're riding to the top, and Gary Wheeler pops back in, surprises everybody. And at first, it just feels like, oh, Santi, my dad is back. This feels so good. But then he almost has this guilt trip about him where he wants his dad to, ride down the last few holes with him as his caddy and, help him ride to glory. And it turns out that Gary is just as toxic and manipulative as he always was. Santi has an implosion. And it takes Mitch to almost have this moment of like humbling moment of himself to finally give Price some essence of like, dude, like you need to go do this. Like you are good at what you do. You need to help this kid for Price to, rip onto the golf course and kind of save the day, so to speak.
Yeah, he needed a kind of a hype up. But yeah, I don't know. For me, I mean everything in the finale was a little bit predictable for me, and it I don't know. I really thought that it hit its stride in the 9th episode. Like that was like probably the best episode to me. And it just seemed sort of anticlimactic by the time it got to the finale. And I actually watched the 9th episode, and then I was like, oh wait, there's still one more. Yeah. Like I actually almost was thinking of the 9th episode as a finale. I was like, wow, that's such a cliffhanger. And then I was like, shit, there's one more. Like it took me a second to realize that. And
well, they had to finish the tournament.
Right. I know, but I didn't know if they were gonna. I was just so in this mindset of like the 9th episode felt like a finale to me. There was just so much going on. So I don't know. The part with Santi and his dad was so predictable. Like we all knew it was going to turn bad. And within like 3 minutes, of course, it turned bad. Yeah. Then it was like, Elena was like, bye, Gary, get the hell out of our lives in 2 seconds. And we knew that would happen, sort of. We didn't know she would say those words, but we knew it would happen, that, the father would push Price away to make room for his father, and his father would screw him over. Like we all saw it coming. We knew it was going to happen. So I don't know. I just felt like it was very, very predictable, but I did like the fact that it came together and it was resolved with Price. He was back in, so everyone ended up being happy and everything. But yeah, I'm just glad that the show is picked up and it's continuing, because I generally enjoyed it, and I was like, this has to continue. Like I will be very, very disappointed if we don't get another chance to see this. Like, I loved the ensemble cast. I loved Mitz, and I loved surprisingly, I loved Zero being a part of, the cast. Like, I loved Elena and Mitz. I loved the whole team. Like, I was like, we need to see more of this.
Yeah. And it was the fact that with Gary, like I kind of was expecting some kind of tension to happen there, but at the same time, I don't know if it was necessarily predictable because I wanted that to come in and have some like healing there, because that was kind of why he was pushing Price away so much, is because of how he had developed his skill under his father. So part of me also was kind of hoping that there would be some healing moment there and it wouldn't turn bad. I don't, I mean, and like maybe, Elena's always saying this is going to be bad, this is going to be bad, but, maybe there was an element of like to trick the audience to think that it will, and then he turns around and it's like, hey, no, I've changed. So like, I also kind of was hoping for some faux redemption angle, I guess, pseudo redemption.
Yeah, I think, there was a moment where Gary apologized. He said, I'm sorry for leaving, I'm sorry for things. And I kind of, I sort of spotted that I'm not super observant. I'll be honest. But I did think, I was like, is he being genuine though? And I also found it weird too, the fact that Santi was like so into his dad coming back. Like, I feel like, if your dad left and like screwed you over like that, wouldn't you kind of be like, well, why now? And why are you coming back into my life now? Like, wouldn't you be skeptical and kind of standoffish? Like, the fact that like Santi and his dad were all good, like in 2 seconds, I thought was a little bit weird. And I didn't think that that's how a kid would react if their parent did them wrong like that necessarily.
I mean, yes, you're skeptical, but you still want that relationship, especially if it's one that was estranged or you never had. Because boys still need a male role model. Regardless of who it is, they still need a male role model. So, and when that's strained, when it's non-existent, there's still part of you that always wants that. So I can see how it's more. He comes in and he may be skeptical, but he's also 17. There's going to be some naivete to the character just because of his age. So I can see how he still wanted to accept it with open arms, especially given the connection to the golf, where Gary was the reason why Santi's game was developed like it was, and why his natural ability was so over the top.
But like, it's also the reason that he stopped playing, or he felt like he didn't want to play, was because of his dad leaving. So I don't know. Yeah. I would have liked to see a little bit more like skepticism to like, have Santi say, okay, yeah, you can be my caddy or whatever, but kind of like keep him at arm's length. Just be like, you know what? Like, even saying to Elena, being like, you know what? I really want to trust dad, but I don't know if I can right now. Something like that.
Which
like
to
having
that point,
like
which to that point, it's funny because he had Price's lessons in his head as far as deciding how to go about a hole. And Gary walked him back, being, no, be more aggressive, be you. And that led to his implosion on 16.
Right.
But then when Price comes back and Santi rejects Gary, and they look at each other and it's like, well, the smart play would be this. And Price is like, yeah, but let's burn right over the trees instead. So, like, it's almost like it was a how versus a what. Like, I know you're aggressive and I know you've got this natural skill set, but it has to be the right situation to employ it, not just do it whenever you want and whenever Gary would have wanted you to do it.
Yeah, a little more strategic and a little more clever and thoughtful. And I think Price is the only person that can do that for Santi, right? Like his dad like brought him up. His dad probably saw the raw talent, was like, wow, you could be really good. But I don't know that his dad knows the game like Price does. So
No. Well, hopefully you think we know our game when it comes to reviewing shows and movies. And if you do and you enjoy listening, we very much appreciate a 5-star review. If you're listening on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, make sure you hit that follow or subscribe button, especially on YouTube, so you know when our episodes drop. Here's how to reach us, especially if you want to let us know just how in the game we are. Email us redandredrealreviews@gmail.com. That is the letter N and real spelled with 2 E's. And follow the show on Instagram at redandredrealreviews. Next up, it is our finale of season 2. We're trying to keep our road rage in check with another video game adaptation, this time featuring Anthony Mackie's return to the role of John Doe in season 2 of Twisted Metal. It's on Peacock, which hasn't always been featured a lot on the pod, but it is our season finale, so don't miss it as we wrap up and take a much needed break from reviewing. Until the next real review, Red and Red are signing out.
In less than an hour, aircraft from here will join others from around the world.
Don't act so surprised, Your Highness.
Hey guys, you ready to let the dogs out? What? Do what?
No. Try not. Do. Or do not.
Because I don't want no scrubs. Let the dogs out, you know, like, who let the dogs out? Who? Who brought this guy along?
I can go slow ahead. Come on down and chump some of this shit.
One more thing. Do me a favor. Don't go chasing waterfalls.
Mankind, that word should have new meaning for all of us today.
You're gonna need a bigger boat. Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?
I'll take care, all right? None but love. None but love.
Have any clue what's about to happen to him?
Oh, not a chance in hell. Good night.
Blow up! Peace! Smile, you son of a...
You did it. You crazy son of a bitch, you did it.
Toodaloo, motherfucker.
Hey, it's not funny anymore.
TLC references. Still nothing, I swear to you.
But as the day when the world declared in one voice, we will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish without a fight. We're going to live on. We're going to survive. Today, we celebrate our Independence Day.